everybody, it's Renee from Weekly Watercolor Challenges, and today I'm going to share a quick little underpainting study. I'm like most of you, I'm just a regular person. I'm learning as I go. I make mistakes all the time, and a lot of the times I'm flying by the seat of my pants right alongside with you guys with these challenges. So I'm going to show you my process for studying. Underpainting is new to me too, so I have about the same level of information that most of you do. I know that it's essentially a monochrome wash that you paint under your painting to give it more realistic depth and higher luminance and highlights for when you really want to make it pop. So we're going to try that for the first time. I've never done an underpainting before, and I'm going to show you my whole quick little process here, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, and hopefully it's relatable to you. So let's go. So let's talk about supplies really quick. I don't have anything special at all. I've got a pencil, I've got a little sheet of watercolor paper that I already stretched, which if you're new and you don't know what stretching watercolor paper is, it's basically a little process that you go through to help the paper keep from buckling and getting wavy when you're painting. If you put a lot of water on it, it's gonna absorb that water, and as it absorbs, obviously the paper expands. So what you want to do before you start painting, if your paper is not really heavy to begin with, this one's 140 pound, what you want to do is you're going to just tape the edges down with a painter's tape or an artist's tape, and then you're going to just wet the whole thing. You're going to get clean water and just wet the whole thing, a nice even coat, and then let it dry and take off the tape, and you're good to go. So I've got my pencil, I've got my watercolor paper, I've got a Royal Langnickel round brush. It's not even a watercolor brush, I'm just using what I have. Little plastic palette, already got some paint in it that I'll probably just reuse. I'm not using anything fancy. I've got Winsor Newton Cotman paints. I've got 12 colors, and I think I spent, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks on these, so should be pretty accessible. And then the last thing, but really important, is I've got some clean water, and I've got a container for rinsing my brush between colors so that I don't make it all muddy. So let's jump in and see what we can do. To start out with, I'm just studying. I've never done this before, so I don't want to get too in-depth on something that I think I might be really attached to, something that I'm going to put a lot of effort and detail into, because I know on this first try, I'm probably not going to be very happy with the results. So instead of, going all out and starting a fish or a summer-themed painting, what I'm going to do, since it's my very first time, I'm just going to start with some basic shapes and try to shade them. I'm going to use the underpainting technique, and I'm going to use a couple different colors to see what the different effects are, and just go from there. So just a quick little practice. What I'm going to do is, I think I'm just going to draw some circles, or try to, because circles are kind of hard. So just really rough. I'm just thinking about the shape a little bit, and I think I'm going to do 4. So we can try some different underpainting colors and see the different effects that we get. A lot of people don't know where to start when they're working with shading. A lot of people think that you might use black for your shadows, but if you've got a blue object or a red object, your shadow's not going to be black. It's going to be a deeper shade of that red color or that blue color or whatever. So that's one thing that underpainting can help you with. I'm just gonna kind of lightly erase these. If I erase too much, I'm gonna end up damaging the surface of the paper, which I really don't want. Let's see, I've got a couple colors here already. So let's see about a blue base, a yellow base, and a green base color just for the fun of it. And then I'm also gonna do a black one, just to show you what that looks like. So if you have tube paints and you're not familiar with them, what I do, if you can see here, I just put like the tiniest little dot of paint. You don't need very much pigment. It's gonna go a long way when you mix it with your water. So I'm gonna throw some black down in here too. I just squeeze the tiniest bit out and I'm good to go. So because we're building up layers of color, what I want to be careful about is I don't want these colors to be too vibrant to begin with. If I start them out too dark, it's going to be really difficult to layer in other colors later. So I've got some clean water. Just get the extra off. And I'm going to start with this blue, but my blue's already dry, so I take that clean water if you're new, and you can just reconstitute it. It's one thing I really love about the watercolors. So I've got some pigment on my brush, which is, it's, you know, wet, ready to go. And the next thing I need to do is decide which way I want the light to come from. So, you know, I'm a creature of habit. I'm kind of stuck in my ways. So I always tend to kind of come in at this angle. So I'll have my light source be over here, and my darkest part of this sphere is going to be on the opposite side of it. So I'm just gonna bring the darkest color in, maybe want a little bit more water to spread it out. And I'm just gonna start at the darkest bits and work these up. And I already made a mistake. I should have left some white for that most bright part, but I didn't. So just really proving to you early on that I'm not much different than you. All new, all making mistakes. So I'm going to clean that brush, and I'm going to grab the orange color, and let's see if I can do a better job on this next one. So I just get some clean water, I dip into my orange, and I'm going to try the same thing, but I'm going to try to be more mindful about that highlight spot that I want, because obviously your colors are all transparent. So if you want something reflective or very, very white, you need to let the paper speak for itself and leave some of that white in. I'm not doing a great job again, but it's a little better than the blue one. So let's clean the brush, get some clean water, and try again with the green. So I'm gonna, again, try to make another change, because I realized I made a mistake here and I shouldn't have brought that orange all the way around in the same way. So maybe I can be a little bit better with the green. And I want to work somewhat quickly so that I can get these colors blended and pulled in really nice before they all start drying. That way I don't have any hard lines. So let's try that. I'm thinking I like the green. So I'm going to clean this. Get a little clean water and go for that black. I really want to show you what happens when you add black for a shadow. So let's see if we can replicate some of our success with the green one. Try to leave some of that white space. I'm just trying to be mindful about the shape. I see I got a little more clean water to kind of pull this out and blend it. So if we're mindful about the shape, dang it, I messed it up again, and how we pull our water through, we can start creating more three-dimensional effects. And I'm not liking that hard line. This right here. So I'm gonna just try to blend him out with some clean water and push the pigment back toward the dark side if I can. But I'm not doing a great job. See, now this is getting really wet. So we'll see how this works out. Just try to blend it. And now it's way too wet, so I'm going to get a little cloth and lift some of that pigment out. So I've just got a kind of scrapped cloth here. I'm just going to dab it at that edge where it's really hard and really wet and pull some of that out. Sort of. So we're going to let that dry and see how that looks before we add more layers of color to it. So we really want to work on building up depth. So let's let that dry and I'll catch you in a minute. All right, so these first colors that I laid in, those are dry already. So I'm going to go ahead and layer in another thin layer of color over top of these. So I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these all as red spheres, and we're going to see how these different colors in the underpainting affect the final outcome of that. So I've dipping back in the clean water. I've got some red here on my palette. So I just kind of swipe at the edge with clean water. And if you take a look at pictures of reflective things, you know, if this was a hard plastic ball, that reflective spot would be pretty much white. And then everything around it is going to be, it's going to be really bright red at that highlight, and then it's going to kind of dull back out and be dark again in the shadows. So I'm going to start at the dark side again. I probably have too much water on this brush, so let's get some of that off. And I'm going to do the same process following the shape I already laid in for that sphere, and just kind of come up and build it around. So I'm going to leave a lot of that white spot and see what happens. And you see I just did a really thin layer of color. I don't want to just glop it on all at once, or you're not going to build a lot of that really subtle depth that you end up seeing in a lot of awesome watercolors. So clean my brush again. Let's try to go back on this blue one and see what we can do here. See, now if you're familiar with color theory, obviously you know blue and red make purple. So when we're layering this transparent red over top of this nice blue that we already put down, we're ending up with this really, really cool purple color where the light is going through the red and hitting the blue. And when they come, what you're seeing is purple, obviously. So it's really neat because you get kind of, you're able to see both the colors at once, and I like that a lot. So let's see what happens when we do this over the green. Well, that's kind of cool. I need a bit more water though. Just making sure I have my darkest spots in the same areas that I already did the underpainting. Oh, too much water again. You figure at some point I'll learn, but we'll see. So I'm going to try to leave that white spot really bright. So I started with my darkest pigment on this side and kind of, I didn't dip more paint or more, well, I did get more water to blend, but I just let the color fade out as I get through it. And get some clean water, and now we'll go for the black. Let's see what happens with this guy. Oh, my shapes aren't very good. All right, let's let those dry and check back in a minute. Okay, so it's been just a minute, and if you're able to see, we've got some really nice depth over in this one. We've got, you know, the lighter blue, lighter purple on this side where we had just a little bit of red overlap. And then as the pigments were darker, we created this really nice purple, and you can see some subtle variations in there. I think it, for me personally, looks really interesting. I would say this one, I got too wet. You've got these kind of jagged watermarks instead of having that nice smooth gradation as you've got here. This one looks okay, but my shape is, you know, obviously really hard and kind of weird. And then take a look at the black. Definitely it's interesting, but as we know, most shadows aren't black. So if we're going for realism, this isn't really going to serve us in the long run unless it's going to be a really, really dark area or a really, really, really dark red. You definitely want to go something more in terms of like using a blue underneath it or something that's going to darken that red but not actually be black. So this guy's still wet, but these ones are a little dry. So let's see what happens when we add a bit more red to that. So I'll just clean my brush. And let's see. Maybe we can make this purple one even nicer. So again, just following the shape I already laid out. Try to blend it really nicely. There we go. That's looking okay. It's not perfect. I'm not the best at painting spheres, obviously, as you can see, but it's all right. So really what I'm learning is I need more practice with my shapes and my shading, and I'm glad that I decided to practice with just basic shapes and not a drawing that I'm super attached to, since this is a new technique for me. I'll let that go through. Grab a little more red for this green one, maybe a touch more water. We're just building up really thin layers of color to get that depth that we're looking for. All right, and our black one should be fairly dry, so let's go back over in this one and see how we do. A little more water, my brush is drying out. And just kind of try and make sure it's a nice even coat. And already these ones where I had complementary colors, or rather not complementary colors, because complementary colors are opposite on the color wheel, but I had colors that I knew would go really well with red. So obviously blue and red, you get a nice purple, and then red and orange, you get this really beautiful deep red orange color. So we're starting to build a lot more depth. We've got these lighter highlights and some nice shadows going on. So let's see what we should do here. Clean my brush, and I'm going to dip back in, and I'm going to go back to that blue one. Try to bring out even more. Just real thin layers. And I think we should have a touch darker on this side. And get a really nice red. Get a little more paint on my brush. Really fill in these bottom shaded sides. Some more clean water. Some more red, and I'm going to hit this guy again. So again, if you're just hitting the middle of the video for some reason, you know, this is brand new to me. I've never done an underpainting before, so I'm learning right alongside you, but I'm enjoying the results and getting some pretty fun effects here. So I think, honestly, I'm liking this one the best at the moment, even though my highlight shape is a little, you know, that line's a little hard. Maybe I want to try to scrub that out later. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm going to grab a little more red. I'm going to go back to this one that I started with, the green. See if we can build up some more depth there. Just pull that highlight, tint it a little reddish pink. And then this one's still too wet. If I keep going, it's gonna not be happy with me. So if you find that something is way too wet, just stop and let it dry if you can, and go from there. So I think that's gonna be it for this video. I just wanted to show you kind of how I work, and that, you know, we're all in the same boat together. So yeah, just experiment. You know, reach for new things. Reach out for help if you need it. Grab a friend, grab some resources online, and we're all here to help each other. So if you've got questions, leave them below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy painting!